Hey there, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining me here live on Facebook. I so very much appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Now, what we're going to be doing today, and I say we because I've got my amazing little co-host over here. This is going to be so much fun because this is just a nice blast from the past that we have going on here. So what we're going to be doing today is I wanted to figure out a really great way for me to celebrate my 100th episode of my podcast, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. But I thought there wasn't any other better way to do that than live with you here on Facebook, and even better to do it with someone who has been there from the start. She was one of the very first guests on the show, and that whole relationship just snowballed from there, unfortunately. And again, we'll talk more about that in just a second. But that is why I wanted to do this here on Facebook and to have her on, because I think she's going to have a huge impact on this. And I just remember thinking of how can I celebrate this 100th episode of my podcast, because it's almost like a birthday, right? It's something that's so amazing and so big, you have to make it incredible. And I couldn't think of a great way, and I think I really hit home with this idea to, one, do it live here on Facebook with you, even though this episode won't actually go live on the show here for the next couple of weeks, and by doing it with my amazing business bestie, Alessandra Colaci. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to her, but in case you don't know who I am, my name is Ali McAdam, and I am a self-taught web designer turned Instagram strategist, and I'm also a single mama to an amazing, too sassy for his own good 3-year-old. So here's my co-host Alessandra, and it's so much fun to be back here live with everyone with her.
Yay! And I feel very unprepared. I didn't bring the streamers or like confetti poppers or anything.
So what, put it in front of the camera? What are you gonna do? Like this way?
Yeah, and especially if you're listening to this afterwards on the broadcast on the podcast, you cannot see those things, but just pretend that I brought those things. And we're just really excited to be chatting again on Facebook Live here, because we used to have a show together. And so it's fun to be reminiscing and going back down that memory lane. And I'm super excited to chat with just how much has happened in the past,
oh my God,
how long has it been? It's been at least a couple of years probably now that we've known each other, right? Like, because we
3 years almost.
Yeah, it kicked off pretty much with the podcast. That's when we first kind of just got re in touch with each other, and then from there, as Ali says, our friendship, as she puts it, unfortunately, because she's so sassy.
I know you would say it.
Yeah, whatever. No, Ali, I'm not mean like you, but I'm just kidding. Well. And as you can tell, we have fun just, kind of with each other. And it's hilarious because I think that's what's been really good is we can chat with each other. We can share the highs and the lows, and we can joke about it. And so we'll talk a little bit about how that plays a part in getting through this thing we call business.
And she forgets to mention that she's the live stream and video marketing expert. So getting here live with her was kind of nerve-wracking because I'm trying to figure this all out and get all the little, pieces, the gears put together. And I'm just sitting here like, oh, I know Alessandra just put this together like that. And I'm sitting here like stumbling like crazy. And she would just, put it together like it's no big deal. But it's nice to be doing this with her because she knows what she's doing and she can fix my mistakes as I make them, which happens quite a lot. So
we all do it.
So again, I'm really excited for anyone that joins in with us here live, or if you're watching later on the replay, or also we're going to be having this, like I said, for the 100th episode of the podcast that's going to be coming up here in a couple of weeks. But for those of you who are watching live, basically what we're going to be talking about is our business, how we got started, how we met. I really wanted to have Alessandra on because, like I said, she's one of the very first guests that I had on my podcast, and my podcast has been instrumental to my business, and it's definitely shaped a lot of what I've done, and so has she, which is why I kind of married the two together to do them live with you here on Facebook. So that's what we're going to be talking about, and our pitfalls of our businesses, how our businesses for some odd reason have totally aligned over the past few years that we've known each other. It's been crazy. It's been, really, really insane. And also I want to talk about, our struggles that we've gone through, but also some of our successes and where we want to go from here over the next, I don't know, should we say 5 years? Because if we say 10, it's too far, and 1, that's too close. So we'll say 5 years. And I'm really excited to hear, some of Alessandra's ideas and talk about these. And I already talked to her about it. She's very willing, and I'm more than willing to be very, very candid with just how much of a struggle this business thing has been, and a roller coaster ride. She's been there along everything I've gone through. I've been through most of what she's gone through. She's been a huge influence. We've influenced each other, but her mostly to me, of our own businesses and personal lives. I'm really excited to get into that. Now, what I want to start with is Alessandra introducing her business and what it is she does, and why that's important and how that's been able to impact your personal life. Let's start with what your business is. Since that was
a little lead into that. So yeah, I think what's super interesting to me is how I've been in this business world before, and that was many moons ago in 2005, back in MySpace days, and grew a startup at the time to be millions of visitors. So that was, like kind of a it's like I didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. And I was like, oh man, is this going to happen? Can lightning strike twice, And so I think that's always kind of at the back of my mind. But after that, I went back in the corporate world. And then when Periscope and live streaming started to really come out and grow, I got really involved in that space because I love video. And so the days of Periscope,
that so funny.
And I mean, Periscope is one of those things. It's kind of, some people still do really well on there, but Facebook Live has taken off since then. And so we started to do live streaming services where we do production for companies, and we still do that. But we also have added in kind of produced video where we go in and we do video shoots, or we take footage and we do editing and we create video content. And that is really a key focus of mine for this year and for next year, is for us to be able to be the video kind of central for a lot of these businesses, for them to come to us and us to teach them how to use video, whether it's really kind of quick video content that they're creating on the fly and what the strategies around that, or also video content we produce remotely or in person, just depending on what the situation is. And so the funny thing to me is when I left my corporate job to start a business again, and it's been almost 2 years, coming up in October, it'll be 2 years.
No way.
And yeah, isn't that crazy?
2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years. So 2 years in October, it's going to be 2 years.
So yeah, we've been friends for a while because I was...
Yeah, because it was before that.
I remember that, yeah.
Exactly. And I remember, it's just so funny how things have shifted so much, like throughout that time. And and again, going back to the kind of candid conversation that we were having, and we don't want to be like, and then we're, bajillionaires and we're like doing so successful. Well, yeah. But I think that, it's one of those things, a year and a half in, things started to kind of take a turn for the better, and it's the first year, I kid you not. And in our case, we had saved up a significant amount of savings to put into the business. A lot of people don't have that advantage, but we had saved and kind of like saved all our pennies. And so we knew that investing into the business was going to have that return later on, but it may not be right away. And so, honestly, the first year was very much figuring out what was working, what's not working, changing our strategy, shifting and focusing on different things, and really getting to that zone of genius. And that's key, right? So we're trying to, we're still trying to figure out how can we best serve our people. But the funniest thing to me is I had a web design agency also back in the day before our startup. Yeah, I know. That's where they start. And so before my startup in 2005, I had a web design agency, and I was like, I'm never going to have an agency ever again. That's the one thing I'm going to stick, and now here I am. I'm back to having an agency. Yeah. But it's very, it goes back to, again, like I talked about, going to that kind of what is the zone of genius and who are the people you want to work with? I think last time I had an agency, it was very much like, okay, sure, whatever, we'll just work with whoever comes our way. But now it's very much like, what kind of synergy are we going to create? What kind of results are we going to get? And if we can't get those results for them, that's not a good fit for either of us, So I think that's the difference, right? So setting those boundaries and those guidelines, and that's both for us and the people we work with, so that it's a great situation for everyone.
I think that's such a good point. And one thing I think so many people, when they go into wanting to do business, they get a choice to make. And that is, do I keep my job and do this as a side hustle until it builds up to replace that job? Or do I quit my job now and just jump right into it and just hope that I can build my wings as I'm tumbling down the freaking cliffside? What you did, I remember you going through this, and when you quit your job, I remember how excited we were because we're both business junkies and we could geek out on that crazy together. But then I remember how scary it was, how much that was going to impact you and your life and your income and your family and Mark, your husband, and everything all together, and how much of a difference it made to quit your job that you were making, you were making a living on, a decent living on, and now to do that. So I think that's really inspiring for some people to listen to and hear. Sometimes you got to build your wings and sometimes you got to wait, but other times you just gotta go with your gut and figure out what is right for you. So I think that was really cool going through that experience. That's crazy that it's been 2 years. I had no idea that it's been that long. That we're like, I feel like it was like this yesterday. But
I know, and that's what's crazy. But I think also like it's so funny because every time I listen to people who are successes that I look at and I point to as, oh, I want to be as successful as they are. And I think people forget that backstory, that the first couple of years they weren't doing really well, or the first couple of years they weren't making money, or the first couple of years they were spending a lot of money, or whatever the case may be. And people see the now, but they don't see kind of the gradual uptick day by day, how it builds to that. And sometimes there's that hockey stick effect after a couple of years, and sometimes it's still just a gradual uptick for the next 2 years. But I always say for me, if I can this year make a certain percentage of what I was making, me and my husband, because we're both business owners now, in what we were making at our corporate job. I know it's been like such an awesome blessing to be able to. And that's what's really cool is just that support, and whether you find that with your spouse, or you find or sometimes it's hard for them to understand, which makes sense because it's like, are you crazy? What are you doing? But I think find a community of people too that supports you in that. But really looking at it, we're like, well, this is building for the future. This is building for the long term. So if we're gonna build our business in the next couple of years to what we were making, that's still a win. And then we double that and triple that, and whatever that looks like in the next few years, eventually you're really like surpassing what your income could have been at a regular job.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but I like the surpassing point, but there's no glass ceiling. Like when you're in a job, there is, it seems like you can go so high, but it's a total glass ceiling, and I think that you can go above and beyond that. And I like that you talked about the community part. Speaking of community, that's kind of how we met. So now that we've gotten an idea of who Alessandra is and how you can fall in love with her and check her out and go follow her agency, which you should, by the way, especially those of you who are listening to the replay later on of the podcast, check out Alessandra by going to influencebuzz.com. Is that a right link, or is there a better link? There's like a million links we have.
Yeah, or influencebuzz.agency. Either one works.
Perfect. So we'll do that. And then also I wanted to mention that Alessandra is really great to work with because she's the kind of person that she will relate to you. And like she mentioned before, like she's not going to work with you unless she knows it's a good fit both ways. Because, if there's that disconnect on either side, then there's that disconnect, and it's going to really show prominently in the work that's done, in the projects that's completed, and the results that you get. So I just had to put that in there. I'm probably going to be boasting a lot about her throughout this whole show that we're going to be doing. But I also want to mention, how we met, we were actually with, what's
Fizzle?
the membership?
Yeah, Fizzle.
We were part of Fizzle. We joined this membership group together, or not this membership, this mastermind group together, which was cool. It was great. But it didn't work out, which those of you who have tried mastermind groups, that happens. Like that's totally normal. You got to find the right people that you have a good synergy with, and you all get along well together, and it just works. Ours didn't totally, completely. It was fine, but it wasn't the right thing. And then I asked Alessandra towards the end to be on my show. She reluctantly said yes because I was a nobody and it wouldn't give her an exposure, but she had pity on me, so she decided to go for it.
Actually, I was like the Allie McAdam.
I remember when I started my podcast. Here's the thing, you guys. I couldn't get Facebook to work at the time. I couldn't get Instagram to work. I couldn't get anything, social media work. I couldn't get marketing work. Nothing worked for me. So I did this podcast, and that was like my little of getting a voice and being heard on like some small level. And Alessandra was really big part of that, and she infiltrated the show in more ways than I could explain, because that one show is crazy if you think about it. That one show, we weren't even friends when we did that episode. If I listen back to it, it'd be weird, right? Because it's like we don't have like that connection of like teasing each other now and like playfully like joking and putting each other down and totally like messing with each other. So that was cool. It was really nice that you said yes to do that. And at the time you were also launching your own podcast. So, which again is something I mentioned before, our businesses have aligned in so many ways over and over and over again. Like we are always launching the same type of projects. We're always trying something new, which is so cool because we're total geeks. Alessandra especially, and we are able to geek out on it together. Like we'll go learn so much about one thing, and then as we're going through this, we're doing it together, and we're able to help each other in that. So I think that's been absolutely amazing. Do you have anything to say about that? You hated it. It was horrible.
Oh, it was
you
terrible. I mean, you was terrible. Your geekiness was just like such a put off, like.
I know. The podcast
I
was fun,
and I think that's the thing too. Like, find your community or find your people, and find, like Ali said, bestie. I mean, Ali and I are friends in real life, quote unquote.
It's a real thing. I learned that from someone else. That was not a statement.
And it kind of happened organically, but also seek that out. Like, I think it's one of those things where it can be very lonely, especially if you're in a very specific niche, or you're early in your business and you feel like, man, is everyone else like doing super well? And that might not be the reality, but you think it is.
That's how it feels. Yeah,
it feels like that. But you can have someone that encourages you, and it was so funny because I'm very technical. But when we were starting our podcast, I could not get the RSS feed figured out.
I know.
And Ali had already done that part. And I was like, this should be so simple, and then it was one of those things where that was like the little step I was stuck on. And plus it kind of encourages us to set goals for each other and say, hey, when are you launching yours? When are you launching, all that kind of stuff. So that's something I think that you can help each other with, but also don't run in 10,000 different directions, and that's been the hard thing for me, over this last almost couple of years of being in business is, finding what makes sense for you, but also, sticking with something long enough, but also not being afraid to abandon things if you need to. And I think that's the hard balance, right? You can't say, oh, I can only do one thing for 20 years. And then I'm, I got to keep on sticking to it if it's not serving a purpose. Right. And I think that's the key thing that I've learned is a lot of times people are like, oh, webinars are a thing, or podcasting is a thing, or live videos is a thing, or whatever's a thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do all of the things. And when I love podcasting, for example, and Allie's phenomenal at podcasting, but it's one of those things where,
You're just saying that because you're on the show right now. I paid you to say that.
Well, first of all, I'm on her 100th episode, and I think
Can we just stop for a second and 100 episodes?
Yeah, that's huge.
When I started this, I had no idea what I was going to do with this. You know what I mean? I was like, I'll just start. I'll probably end up quitting, or someone will push me out of space because I'm not that good, or someone will smack me and be like, what are you doing, woman? Stop talking. No one wants to listen. But I kept going, and we're at 100. That's insane to me.
That is insane.
Anyway, sorry. I had to have a moment.
No, and that's huge. And I think that is a testament to Ali sticking to what's working for her. And it wasn't working from day one. I mean, she had to build an audience, and even
I think my mom was listening to it at the time. You know, people are like, oh, well, I have my mom and maybe my grandma listening. My mom wasn't listening.
Her mom was like, what's a podcast?
I listened to myself. There wasn't even.
Yeah. And I think, so that's something that's really amazing because she's stuck with it through 100 episodes, So I think that's something where it's when you see what's the right fit for you and you say, okay, I'm going to do this thing, but don't feel like you have to do all the things. That's just kind of a key piece of advice I'd say for people. Pick 2 or 3 things. Same thing with social media. Pick maybe 2 social networks that you want to really focus in on. And Ali, you talk a little bit about how you found what social network you wanted to focus on, because that was an evolution over the course of your business.
Yeah. So I started working with an MLM, and I was nervous to do it. I talked to Alessandra a lot about it, how nervous I was, because MLMs get a lot of backlash. It's the bad thing to do, apparently. But it's a business model, one that I actually believe in many different ways if you do it right, not in a spammy way. And I learned very quickly that I had to figure out how the top income earners were making it work for them. And so I figured out that a lot of them were on Instagram and it was working really well for them. And so I was like, all right, I'll just follow what they're doing and start doing that. And turned out I was terrible at the MLM I was doing, but I was great at Instagram because I had learned all these things from all the podcasts I'd listened to and everything, and was able to bounce ideas back and forth with Alessandra and try all these strategies and throwing wet noodles at the wall and just seeing what stuck, and was able to go from 300 to 3,000 followers in just 6 weeks, and then it doubled after that just in the same amount of time. It was crazy. And I remember when I hit 6,000 or 7,000 followers. The number doesn't matter, but my point is when I hit a certain amount, I remember going to Alessandra and being like, this is so cool. And her going, hello, why aren't you doing this for other people? And I'm like, well, I'm a nobody. I'd be like, well, there's someone who has 20,000 or 100,000, or there's celebrities that have millions of followers. This, comparatively, that's nothing. And I remember her just saying, you don't know your value. You don't realize that there's so many people, and that know your value thing. Oh my gosh, I've done a live video on that. I've gotten so many people just saying that hits home for them. And it hits home for me too, because it's something I'm so bad at. And Alessandra has to smack me upside the head virtually, because I only see her once every year. we'll get into that too. How you can have a relationship that's like totally virtual. But she like really pushed me into it. It was just something I wanted to do anyway. That's the beautiful thing about having a business bestie is all she did was give a confirmation towards something I was already thinking I wanted to do. And she was nice enough to allow me to hack her account. She gave me permission to hack her account, aka she gave me her password. And we were able to, grow her following a significant amount. It was really cool and it was great. And then, from there, it just snowballed into referrals from friends to clients and to more clients and managing their accounts and growing their accounts. And now I have a membership, which again is all thanks to Alessandra and something that if she hadn't just confirmed that one little thing inside my head, that one thought, I wouldn't be having that membership. I wouldn't have members. I wouldn't have people who look up to me to help them. Something so simple as Instagram too, right? I feel so silly when I say I do Instagram, and I tell us this all the time, who cares? But if you can help someone with something like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or marketing in general or video marketing, build their business, make it so they can live the lifestyles they want to be living, that's impactful, right? That's still changing their lives in a really weird way, but it is. And really weird, but it is.
See, but and it's funny because even as you talk about it, you still hear sometimes that inner imposter, syndrome. As you guys can hear, Allie uses terms that are like inner imposter terms, sometimes, which we all do. I mean, I think it's one of those things. You could be a billionaire and be super successful, and there's still, you'd be surprised to hear that some of those people still have the inner imposter syndrome, or they feel like they're not successful enough. But I think my parents have really drilled into my head that there will always be someone better than you at something, and there will always be someone worse at that thing. Yeah. And there will always be someone that knows more than you, and there will always be someone who knows less. Yeah. Most of the time, if you know a decent amount on a topic, 99% of people will know less than you. And I think the thing, as Allie learned about Instagram, she knew more than 99% of the people out there. She still knows more than most people out there. And it's one of those things where I was like, oh, Instagram. Instagram. I was so indifferent, I think, because here's the thing, this is another learning from that is I was like, back in when did Instagram even start? The first or second year it was around, I created an account, I posted 2 or 3 pictures, and then I disappeared and never did anything. And so then when Allie started talking about Instagram, I got back on there. I was like, oh man, this is depressing. I could have been on the ground floor, because I always get involved in trends early, but the thing is taking advantage of it.
Yes, you do. And it's those people that can see. I'm sorry, I know I interrupt you. I do that a lot. She's one of those people that can see trends so easily. There's there's some people who are like that, but she's one of those people that you want to just be friends with, just so you can know, be on the end. She's not just because she's updated on news and all that jazz, but she sees those trends and Periscope. I remember you telling me to go get on Periscope and telling me to download the app, and I downloaded this app that it was Periscope, Paris the place scope. It was totally random, which is so funny looking back on that. That was so funny. I was like,
she's like, why do you care about this app? She's like, this is so dumb. Weird. And I'm like, no, wait. I think, and she's like, it's in French. Wait a minute, this is the wrong app. That was hilarious.
She was talking about. She doesn't even know. Yeah. So I know.
You're like, this woman's crazy. And that's the thing too, is I think again it goes back to not chasing a million different rabbits, but if you see a trend and you're early, commit to it. I see so many people back when live streaming came out where they're like, oh, but is this a trend? Is it going to stay? And honestly, there are people who got massive on Periscope, and they are no longer on Periscope, but they built a significant audience on there. Yeah. And when the trend shifted to, exactly. And when the trend shifts, can pivot and change, and you can say, okay, let me transfer my audience to something else. It doesn't have to be your end all be all, but it can be one of the multiple places that you bring your audience in and that you get in front of them, So I think don't be intimidated by new stuff. And that's going back to video, because it's my jam. But if you're intimidated by a video, if you never just take that first step, 5 years from now, you're going to say, oh, remember when video started to get really big and I didn't take advantage of it, But I think it's just the baby steps can get you into that trend or into that thing that's going to blow up massively and become really huge. And you don't have to do, amazing things at the beginning. You can just start small.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And I love that. And I think that our story up until now is we met, became unrealistic friends who like totally bug the crap out of each other, aka I bug you. Somehow we tolerated one another, again, aka you tolerate me. And we were able to, I don't know, like business bestie is seriously like the best way to put it. And mostly because it's like best friends, like we're able to talk about personal stuff. Like every year on Alessandra's birthday, she calls me, I know I'm a horrible friend, she calls me not to talk about her birthday, but we literally spend hours and hours and hours, not on purpose, just talking. And it most often than not talks about personal stuff, like maybe like 30% of the time, and then like 70% of the time we're like talking about business on her birthday. And I always feel bad. I always say, Alessandra, like, do you have to go do something? Or like, I feel so bad. And she's like, no, like this is great. And I'm always saying, like, this is how you spend my birthday. Like, this is freaking fantastic. That's the best thing ever. Like, and I always tell people, my friends and my family, I always they kind of make fun of me because I say I'm such a hermit. And this explains me perfectly. My best friend lives in Texas. I live in Utah. That says a lot about my social life. But this is my business bestie, and she's absolutely amazing. I love the story we've been able to go through. And even though it's virtual, we still be able to meet, and in fun ways too. First time we met, we went to Periscope Summit. Ironic that you were just talking about Periscope Summit. That was a trip. That was exciting, right? Like there were so many things that happened there with the summit, and unfortunately, are they still doing it?
I think they are. I think it has a different name though. It's Summit Live, and there's a new owner of it. But yeah, that was like, I think the first one was over a couple of years ago, and that was before I quit my job, and it was actually like right around the time I was thinking of quitting because I just kind of had that feeling. I'm not in a place. I loved my job, and that's the key thing to like think. It doesn't have to be I hate my job, right? It can be like I love my job, but and like Ali said, there's different ways of doing it. If you're listening to this and you say, I've been wanting to quit my job and go full force, I would recommend not to do that, because it's not something that you necessarily have to just like go crazy with and be like, all right, like I took a very unusual route of just like literally quitting and going for it. But I think that you can build some revenue streams on the side. And that's for me too, in the first couple of years of business, my goal is to diversify the revenue streams. So it's the same thing. Like if you have a side hustle in addition to your job, you can have more than one revenue stream. And I think you don't have to be like, I think before people would be, and you should absolutely, because you never know, and it goes back to the same thing, like social networks. If you focus on, let's say, a couple of them, that's still two potential failure points instead of one. If whatever happened, I mean, Facebook's not going to disappear, Instagram's not just going to disappear, but if something were to happen to your account or something like that, you have another thing, right, that you can have, and then you can build own media like email list and website traffic and all that stuff and blogs. But I think, just don't be overwhelmed by all the stuff out there. And if you're building income streams, build one at a time. Don't feel like you have to build like 20,000 income streams and really just like, do that all at once.
Just make it so they're each, and that's definitely something we've had to learn over the years, because it's such a roller coaster ride with business. And I think if you don't have multiple streams, you're more likely to fail. I don't want to say you will fail, but you're more likely to. It's a lot more difficult to survive when you're starting up. And I have like dogs. I don't know. Can you hear them?
No, my dogs are the ones barking in the background.
They're like wrestling, and I'm like, come on. They were sleeping until I hit record, and then they got up and like, okay, we're gonna wrestle now. Like, let's be as rambunctious as possible.
And that's what's so funny too. Like, I think that I love that realness, and that's what I loved about live video is like, you had a dog puke on you live. I had a dog puke on, well, not on me. Let's make the story more dramatic, Allie. He didn't puke on me, near me.
Funny? It's like in my head, I really think that's how the story is. It puked on you because like that's how
you remember it.
That's how I remember it.
I was live streaming. So it was like some serious like business topic, and my dog literally puked like a couple of feet away from me, and I'm just like, oh, okay, continuing on. Hopefully no one heard that. Yeah.
I think it's better to own it than to.
And that's the thing, real, and that's the same thing. Like I said, with creating video content, a lot of brands even are like, oh, we have to be very polished and very
but then it's stiff,
and it's not. It's really telling your story, and you tell your story, and you are real about it, and people will respect that. And people will respect that more than like I am perfection, because they understand that. Like I think a really good story about that is a company called Chatbooks, and so they created a video. I mean, super highly produced, polished video, like it's really well done, but it was very relatable because it was like the day of a life of a mom, and it was so true to all the drama that moms, and I admire them like crazy, that they have to go through in their day, but people were like sharing it like crazy because it connected with that audience that they were trying to get in front of, and that relatability, even though it was like a fictional person, but they like tapped into what their day looks like, and I think that's key with our audience, like with whoever we're talking to, whether we're provide a service or a product or whatever. Absolutely. Tell the story, share in that thing that, it's like a comedian. When a comedian says something that you can relate to, you laugh so hard. And it's just, and it should be
aren't laughing, that.
Like, you're like, oh, they don't know. They don't know. They're not in the loop.
Person laughing the hardest, you're like, you got to do some crap.
We're like, this story. This is your life, So I think that's the thing, like, entertain, inspire, inform, do one of those three things. But, if you do one of those three things, you will connect with your audience. And so it's one of those things where whatever form you do it, Allie does a phenomenal job at that on Instagram. And she has content that connects with the people that she wants to get in front of, and she has content that's helpful to them or inspirational or some form of those things. And that's something that I think people really connected with her. And even in this podcast, what I always tell her is like, I was like, man, I haven't done as many podcasts, obviously, but she gets so much feedback from the audience because I think they see that she's there to help, and they see that how she's real and she's, a human being and not just like, because someone who's there to be like, hey, bye, hi, bye, and that's it. So it's really, I've seen that, I've seen that in your audience, Allie, where people are connecting with you and they're like, wow, you helped me so much in whatever it is that you're teaching them, So that's really cool to see, I think, in the 100 episodes that you've done.
And this 100th episode is my most expensive one thus far because I've had to pay off Alessandra to say so many things about
yes.
me.
She pays me in queso, actually. That's how she pays me.
Queso is her thing. You know what I love about this too is like we will geek out so hard on like the weirdest tools like ActiveCampaign and websites and plugins and all this jazz, and then we'll just like talk about queso, like how amazing it is and how much it like changes our lives. Mostly Alessandra's because she's like loves it.
Well, but I'm in Texas. I gotta love queso and iced tea. So yeah,
without
queso, iced tea, and some hot sauce, and I'm good. But which is funny because I'm a transplant from California. But yeah, I have become very Texan.
Oh, I love it. I think it's cool too that we can. That's one thing I want to say too is that so many people always talk about how lonely it is to be an entrepreneur or a business owner, and I can totally see why. And I've had those moments, but not very many. And it's funny because of how much it's talked about. I would think it would be more prominent in my life, but I haven't really had to deal with that. And at first I thought, well, I've got a good support system, my family, but I really think it came down to like our relationship. And I know this is going to get so cheesy, just cheese alert, queso alert. This is seriously, in multiple ways, seriously, this is something that has really hit home for me because I don't feel that loneliness. And when I get all jumbled up and inside my head, which I do a lot, I'm able to go to someone and say, okay, do I go with A or B? Do I take a step left or do I take a step right? Because that is going to veer my course in the long run, like so much. It's going to make a huge difference. So it's so nice to have that person. And even though we only meet in person every now and then, it's so much fun. It's so worth it. And it was even cool to meet in person for the very first time in an airport, going to a Periscope summit. We didn't even expect that was the way that we were going to meet. And it was really nice being able to, picture the inside of your home from our FaceTimes and then being able to piece all the pieces together in my head once I went there for real in Texas, your beautiful Texas home with your beautiful Texas family. And that was so cool to me. We're even going to be meeting up here very, very soon, going to a conference, which I'm so stoked for and very excited about.
I know. It'll be soon after this broadcast goes out. After this goes out as podcast.
Actually the week after. Yeah.
It's going to be Content and Commerce Summit, which is by a digital marketer whom I love. I probably talk about them way too much with Allie, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I was learning digital marketer. I'm a part of their membership, which is, one of the first kind of actionable legitimate kind of communities that I've joined that I'm like, oh, I'm going to stay in this forever because you got, because it's one of those things they built a community that is there to help. I feel like any question I have, and this is not paid, I'm not being, paid by them.
Other than
but I think we've tried, Allie and I have tried different things that were monthly kind of things. And it's kind of like, what she's creating now with her membership, for example, really good community and really like good content that is going to help people take actionable steps. And I think it's one of those things where if you can find that, but don't always be chasing that either. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to sign up for this, I'm going to sign up for that, I'm going to sign up for da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, if you take like a little, and then you're like, I sometimes have to step back and say, did I take action on whatever it is? I could have gone to a conference, or we're going to a conference coming up, and I'm like, did I take action on that last thing? Did I do anything with the knowledge I gained from it? And if the answer is no, then I probably should not keep on gaining more knowledge, because it's only so useful just in your head, right? And I mean, I have to check myself a lot of times on that, because a lot of times I'm like, well, I got to sign for this and I got to sign for that. And I am a fan of tools that make your process easier if you're to a certain point, but don't let that be the stopper for you. If you're like, oh, well, I don't have the budget for XYZ, that's fine. Start with the free stuff, start with the low budget stuff. But also as you grow, don't hold back on the tools that can make your process faster. If you're sitting there like spending 10,000 hours in Photoshop, like making the perfect graphic, and you can instead, pay for Canva for like a premium account for $12 a month, it's probably worth it, right?
So you Fiverr and have someone else do the same thing.
Exactly.
A third of the time. Yeah.
Where you're like, tweet on that.
Well, I love your point too, that, because I make it a point, I consume a lot of content. I'm one of those people that I listen to podcasts at double the speed, not because like I think I'm cool and can process that much that fast, because I can't always do that, but because there's so much I want to learn, and there's not enough time that I literally just want to like be able to get through more. So I do that. And I like that point that we really need to take action. I make that point too. Okay, I'm only going to listen to today these episodes, and this is what I'm going to do with those episodes. It's going to align with whatever I'm applying in my business for that day. I've actually talked about that on my podcast, how I do that for my own podcast, so that, I don't know, maybe other people can try it too, or maybe it's just my own thing. And I also like that because at our conference that we're going to, we actually plan for an extra day that we're going to stay there. We're not flying out right when the conference ends. Now, one, we're just going to hang out and goof around and be total dorks together like we usually are when we're in person. But two, I'm positive we're going to be like, oh, let's go do something fun. Let's go to this entertainment thing, or let's go out. And I'm positive we're going to end up talking about the conference, like soaking it in, processing it, figuring out how we're going to apply it to the agency and our own businesses. And that's, I think, really powerful, that we're going to take that day and goof off, but also like apply what we learned to make it so that it's impactful. And why pay for something if you're not going to use it?
Yeah, exactly.
Why take the time to learn it if you're not going to?
Yeah, and if you're on 10,000 email lists, but it's like kind of just growing the data bank, right? That's okay to have that in your back pocket, but it's one of those things where if you bite off a single thing at a time, like let's say you say, okay, I want to be really influential on Instagram and I want to grow my audience on there, you can start with that and say, let me just absorb everything I can about that, but like kind of take it step by step, and I think you think of the customer, like anyone is selling, any business that you have is going to be selling something. So think of that customer journey and then kind of focus on the phases of it, right? So where you're looking at how do I become, the first step is always how do you become visible? And that's why I love video, is because it builds that trust and that visibility. But how do you become visible? And I think just focus on that first, right? Like getting that visibility, getting that engagement with your audience. And then you can move on to, selling stuff and doing all that kind of stuff. But also don't forget to get to the part where you're selling stuff. A lot of times you're like,
just don't sell something, you're a hobby. Yeah, you're a hobby, not a business.
I put content out there 24/7 and then you just never sell anything and never make any money, and then you go out of business, right? So I think you have to like kind of plan for phases, and you have to figure out when is good for you in that, right? So kind of think through the journey of your customer, getting to know you and trust you, like you, as they say, it's know, like, and trust, right? So, and then kind of grow the revenue streams, like you said, and different income streams. And that's kind of the process for that, which we have worked on doing the last couple of years. And it's, it's always a difficult battle.
So difficult, and it can be so much work. But like I said, like just having that support and knowing that it's the right thing to do and you're not veering off too much, then I think that's so powerful. But yeah, we've made a lot of mistakes, which kind of leads me into what I also wanted to talk to you about, coming into that candid.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. What is probably the biggest lesson you've learned in your own business because of, on the back of a failure or a misstep, I should say, not a failure, that you've gone through?
Oh, man, Allie, too bad you didn't send me that question ahead of time, because I'm like,
oh yeah, by the way, everyone that's watching, I didn't tell her what we were talking about. I was like, we're gonna have a candid conversation about everything, and she's like, okay,
this is legit. This is real, real raw, like reality TV right here. Although this is actual, like reality TV is more fake than real life. So
I seriously see this being reality.
Yeah, exactly. We need to do a spin-off of this. Yeah. But I think, it's funny because I think from the beginning, I had a very difficult, because I just quit my job. I had a very difficult, like, chasing the money quickly. I don't mean like, oh, make money.
Right. But
I was like, but that should not have been my mentality ever in the first year,
Right.
I think, and that's hard for a lot of people. And I think if you don't have that yet, keep your day job and make money on the side. Or if you don't have that yet, you need to make some money, but not like be like, I got to be a millionaire, just make enough to live off of, But I think that if you're sitting there like, how can I make the most money quickly? You're going to make some missteps, because you're going to sit there and say, like, the first thing I wanted to do was an event. And that was like completely the wrong idea for me, because it just did not fit in with my overall like goal in the next year or two, and it didn't fit in with like what I wanted to evolve to.
Yes to every client.
Yeah, exactly. I said yes to a lot of things that I was like, oh, that was not pleasant, And there's going to be a little bit of that, I think, because you're, if you're starting out, especially if you're a service, an agency, any of that stuff, there's going to be some initial clients that you just are not, in love with. But I think that over time, start to set those ground rules, start to set those boundaries, and start to set the kind of higher expectations for yourself, where you're like, okay, now I can be more selective, and now I can kind of chase the money, quote unquote, and be, not working with people who are nickel and diming. Or if you're selling a product, focus on your really strong customers who love what you do. Don't cater to the people who are like, well, like really nitpicky about something that costs them $2. That's not your people. So I think it's one of those things where I learned that building multiple revenue streams is definitely key, because then I can kind of scale those up, and like as one might decrease, another one might increase, but also just like focusing on building the value, the content, that kind of stuff, which I'm kind of getting back to, because I think I did it really well at that during the first year, and not as much because I'm so focused on client work. We're not pumping out as much like content, like that's kind of aside from that. But I think that's something that has to always be running. It's like the content machine, right?
I so agree. Definitely.
And also not the content machine just to be creating content, but like good content that you would want to be looking at, and you would want if you were in your audience
too. That's not just like, so for instance, we had our show, right? The We Mean Business show. Maybe some of you have heard of it. Maybe probably not, because it's not running anymore.
It was world famous.
It was world famous, but now it's dead. So we had this show called We Mean Business, and we were obviously two co-hosts. We'd sometimes have guests on, and we loved it, or at least I did, and also under fake liking it, but I loved it. It was so much fun to get on a show with her, and we just talked business, which we do anyway. So we figured, why not get in front of the camera and do it? But it wasn't working for us because we didn't have an alignment. It wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't building either of our businesses, other than maybe some exposure, which is always good. But other than that, it wasn't building into a sales funnel, I guess, or it wasn't building into our businesses. It wasn't building into the bottom line of building business and not a hobby. So we had to kill it.
We had to kill it.
We've had conversations of bringing it back, and it never revives because
we were like, oh, maybe we should do it again. But then it goes back to, and this is why, right now I'm in the process of, for my podcast, I killed my podcast too, because it was kind of like, if I revive it.
Which I'm trying so hard to revive. I'm like, over here, like, turn it back on.
And I love podcasting, but I just, at that phase, it wasn't the right fit. we're right now, for example, we do a lot of local marketing, and it probably will come back in a different form, a different name, different everything. But I think it's just like, like I said, it's a difficult balance. I love how like Allie has dogs on the side of her, and my dog just came and he wants me to pick him up.
I know these guys keep coming, like sitting in my lap and like licking me, and I'm like,
he's like, hold me. He's like, why are you yelling at a camera?
Why are you yelling at a camera? Because I'm talking to Allie. That's why.
Because we're doing a podcast, dog.
Because we're talking.
But yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think I'm trying to think more strategically. And even as I was trying to build future revenue streams, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's stuff that I love or stuff that's exciting to me, but does it fit in with the big picture? And does it fit in with like where we're going as an agency, or where we're going to as teaching people these things, and if it doesn't, maybe it's like a future project. It doesn't mean it won't always, but maybe it's not going to pull the levers right now, and so it's not a high priority, For Allie, I think for her, podcasting, she's grown a loyal audience. And I think that's the thing for her. It's working really well. For me, it kind of wasn't doing that. So I think just kind of see what's working and don't be afraid to pivot, but also don't be changing every 5 seconds and be like, oh, I'm going to focus
it might
on,
work one more step from now.
You got to give it enough time. But I think at the same time, if you've been doing something for quite a while and you're like, the best thing is to really take an initial view of things and say, what do I want the next year or two to look like strategically? What do I want to launch? What do I want to put out there? What is going to lead to that? What pieces lead up to that, and kind of break it down instead of just being like, I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do that. And then, just like, cause there's millions of shiny objects, especially in our fields of business, 10 million.
I think I hit like that many in one day. So it's like,
you're like, I'm gonna do that. But we've tried a lot of things, and some of those things have been really intimidating, even when we were both starting our podcast. But I think, it's one of those things where you do it instead of talking about it, but even if you just pick one and you do it instead of talking about it, and then you stick to it and you see how it's like growing and evolving, and then maybe 2 years from now it's different than what it is now, but just kind of take those first few steps, instead of listening, because I know I listened to plenty of podcasts and things before I did any of it.
I know.
I was like, I've learned everything in the world, but oh my
gosh, audiobooks have been like my Achilles heel lately, because they're just like, I just want to consume all the things, like I just want to learn all the things, and I just can't.
Yeah, Allie's like, she's like a junkie. She like, that's what's so funny. She's like, I listen to this podcast and this audiobook and this, and which is awesome, because what is amazing, and then we're both, I will call us both unicorns. I will brag on us for a second, because we very much focus on the technical side and the creative side, and we kind of try to like know all of it, right? And you don't have to be like that. I think it's one of those things where if you are creative, outsource the technical side, or eventually get a VA, or, once you start hiring, hire quickly and early, but not like so early where you're like, oh, I could do this myself, but I'm just going to hire out, because I feel like it, right? So I think it's one of those things where, you can have people come alongside you, or partner with people who know what they're, what that is, and they can help you in that way. So I think it's one of those things where there is a community of people out there that may be able to help give you tips or tricks or whatever. And that's what's been good, is we've been able to kind of, tap into that, especially for each other. We were like, hey, I'm working on this, I'm working on that, but find someone that can
kill each other's ideas if they didn't align, for like, especially for Alessandra, because I would just be like, oh, I want to do this, and I want to do this, I want to do this, and I think I should do this, but I don't think I'm good enough for this. And she'd be like, okay, cut everything else and go with that thing you don't want to do. And it's like, that ends up being the alignment that I'm like throwing my pen at myself. That ends up being the alignment that I needed, that would have made such a big difference. And I also want to say,
and also, because I know we thankfully have this with each other, but if you don't, you can be that inner voice to yourself, or you can seek that out from someone else, because a decision is better than none. Like, I promise you,
so true.
I promise you, like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and all these people, they did not make all the right decisions. No way. No way. And at the beginning, it was them and a couple people, or just them, or whatever. For a lot of these people were really successful, and they had to just say, I could do X or I could do Y. All right, let me do Y. And then the next day, even, there's like, I could do such and such and such. You have these decisions every day as a business owner, and a decision is better than none. because you're going to say, oh, okay, I learned from that. It didn't work. And in this last couple of years, there have been things that I was like, oh, that was a terrible decision. And there have been things I'm like, oh, this is a great decision. Or
you only do that every now and then. I think I again do that like on a daily basis.
Or
oh my gosh.
Or there's also things that it's like, hey, that did okay, but I can scale it up and ramp it up and figure out what's working and build that even bigger, So I think that's the key thing, is just kind of see what's working, scale it up, and then grow it from there. But don't feel like it has to be the perfect decision, because it's just a decision is still good.
I don't think I've ever been called a unicorn before. And I'm kind of like just sitting here like, that feels pretty good. Like I love this title that was just bestowed on me. I just have to.
You feel magical now?
I'm just going to hold that to my title from now on. I'm just going to be a unicorn.
Attach it. You're going to be like on your business card.
I just wanted to put that out there. I don't think I've ever been called that. So I had to like revel in it for just my small 7-second moment. So I'm really excited that I was able to, I was really excited and so glad that I was able to brag on Alessandra a little bit and bribe her into being on the show. And I know for a fact that if we don't stop, we will continue going on for probably another, how long do we talk on your birthdays? Like
this would be like a 5-hour long podcast. You'd have to do it like on a road trip.
That's why we need to bring up WMB again. We mean business, by the way. But we can't, even though I really want to. But we could talk. Like, that's what we do so many times out of the week. We'll just sit and talk forever about the most random things. We'll talk about, what we talk about? We'll talk about
mostly like just cool stuff that we're thinking of ways we're going to market things and marketing your business.
Dogs, next trip we're going to take together when we're going to see each other again. So
cruise.
I just want to say I'm super grateful for everyone that watched this, whether you were able to jump on live or you're watching this in a replay. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time out of your day just to watch this video. And if you watched all the way to the end, that's absolutely amazing. And for those of you who are listening in on the podcast later on, you're even more fantastic. We're 100 episodes in. I can't even see that any more ecstatic. I'm so excited about it, and it's so amazing. And even more amazing is that I was able to do it live with my business bestie, who has absolutely been a huge impact on my business and also my life. So I'm super grateful, and I just want to say thank you to Alessandra for taking the time and allowing me to bribe her into and begging her to come and do this show with me and be live with you and to be the 100th episode on my podcast.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on the show, Allie. You are an inspiration. I think it's one of those things where I've seen you be so consistent with this podcast, and it's so cool to see, because I think that is something that people really need to see as an example of consistency and kind of someone who took it and stayed with it, instead of a lot of people like myself abandon their podcast after like 10, 20 episodes.
It wasn't just
yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of times people are like, oh, I didn't become famous overnight. It doesn't happen like that, and that's okay. Like, and you don't have to become famous overnight. You can grow your audience slowly, organically over 2, 3, 5 years, and then you look back and wow, how far I've come, right? And so you really have stuck with it. Even the early days, all of us podcasters, a lot of times the early days are very much like slow growth, but now I think you've built a like really great audience. And for anyone listening, Allie's a rock star at Instagram, and I just am so, I've been like, oh my gosh, Instagram's so powerful. When I was, like I said, I was like, oh, Instagram, whatever. But I think like just it's really opened my eyes. Talking to her about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so powerful, because Facebook is taking over the world and Instagram therefore is taking over the world. So those things I think work really well together, and of course, because I always have to bring it back to video, coupled with video, on any of those networks. And so I just would encourage you guys, reach out to either of us if you have concerns or questions about your business and your, and whatever, if it's Instagram, or if you're just like, oh, I don't have a business bestie, like I need some encouragement, then reach out to us. Cause like, I'm so thankful to have Allie for that. But if it's one of those things where I know not everyone has that, and that's okay.
No,
I think
just,
right. Exactly. I mean, it's rare. I think a lot of people don't have that. And so don't feel lonely, and don't feel like, there's no one who understands it, because there's a lot of people out there who are going through the same things that you're going through, trying to build your business in the first few years. And even if you've been doing it for a while, it's one of those things where you're always learning and growing. So, we're very accessible, so you can reach out to us and get in touch and listen. We'll be back around for the 200th episode. And
oh my gosh, see how cool that would be? That would be so That would be amazing. Now I can make it a goal to like next year. And I love what you said too, that, you know, just to close everything up and polish this off, my favorite thing that Alessandra just said was that, you know, you got to keep at certain things that maybe aren't working for you right now. And that goes for both business and personal. Like I know as a mom that definitely goes at it. I have to go through 1, 2, 5, 10 tantrums before I can learn how to handle them with my 3-year-old. And that goes for my business too. And that goes with the podcast. I had almost no one listening to me for like the first year and a half. And I'm like a little over 2 years in now. So that says a lot that those last quarter of the time has been, you know, crazy. And I know a big part of that has been Alessandra Colaci and the relationship that I have with her. So that was absolutely amazing. And I've had so much fun doing this show and doing this live with you here on Facebook. I wish that I could say that we're going to do this again next week, but we're not.
We'll do random episodes, you know, here and there probably.
I know, but you should. Yes, but we are going to commit to doing more live videos. And I'm saying this publicly because
I've been slacking. That's what's so funny too. I know as my dad marks now too. Yeah, because it's funny because I think that's the other part of the imposter syndrome. Like I'm trying to practice what I preach, right? And I talk a lot about video, but when I get into it, and now I've been doing so much for clients that I'm like, well, yeah, let me make sure that I don't forget to do it myself, you know?
Yes.
And so I think that's the key thing too, is always kind of take a step back, like quarterly or whatever, and say, is there something that I used to do that I don't do as much and I need to get back to doing? And for me, like live video has been a huge part of my journey and video in general. And I need, you know, I think that visibility is key because then you're getting in front of people who might really resonate with your message. You know, they might be like, hey, wow, what you said was really impactful, but you don't get in front of them, you know? So I think for us, we're just like behind the scenes, and then we need to be in front of the scenes and behind the scenes, you know? So kind of do a mixture of those things. But yeah, but I'm super excited. We'll be, you know, I'm sure Allie's going to be on the 200th and 300th and 400th. And we're going to be talking about this years from now and just looking back on how awesome it's been to learn from her. So thanks, Allie, for teaching us all so much stuff. And I just can't wait to
try to keep up with you.
I paid her to say that too. So, you know, she paid me in cake, so I paid her with, I don't know.
Thank you guys for watching the show. It's been so much fun being able to get in front of the camera with Alessandra and have a conversation. For those of you who somewhat enjoyed this or just thought we were a bunch of dorky girls, that's okay. I would love it if you would share it, or better yet, head over to the podcast where this is going to be aired as the 100th episode, 100 episodes. That's going to be that episode number, and you can check it out by heading over to passionin.biz or to my website allymcadam.com and let's listen to the podcast Passion in Business. And you can also find it on iTunes and Stitcher, and also check out this girl because she is the video marketing expert. If you need anything done with that, go to her because she knows what she's talking about. All right, we're going to close everything out. Thank you so much again for watching this. I hope that you have an amazing day. Keep killing it, and we'll speak with you soon.